Welcome to the Idaho Falls Community Luncheon. My name is Michael Blennis, and I'm the president of the Idaho Falls Rotary Club. We'd like to welcome you in joining us today for our presentation, which is going to be really, I think, thought-provoking. And to get us started, I'd like to thank the sponsor organizations for these luncheons, the Rotary Club, the Civitan Club, and the City Club, and IE Productions for helping us put these on during this period of interesting times. So as is our practice with these video meetings, I like to start the meeting off with a little bit of information about Rotary and a thought for today. And given all the interesting things that are going on throughout our country, I thought I'd maybe reach back into our Rotary history to another interesting time. And so the year is 1933, and America is just coming to the end of the Great Depression. And the Rotary founder, Paul Harris, was addressing a Rotary convention. So the year of 1933 is one of transcendent interest. Events of vast importance are taking place. There's a hush expectancy in the air. What shall we call this period? Life is being cast in new molds. What has wrought the change? The Depression. By no other means could our habits of thought have our actions changed so quickly. We have become disgusted at the undependability of our economic and social structure. Sound a little familiar? Paul Harris goes on to talk about our worship of things has failed our society, and our reconnecting with nature can bring beauty and peace to life. He goes on to say, travel over the roads which wind among the majestic hills. You will find air purified with the smell of balsam, with the song of birds and the babbling brooks. You will be glad you are alive. You will see life in a new perspective. He goes on to say, the friendships of many have made me more than a millionaire. Life is more than steels, motors, rails, more than business. Business is a means to an end, not the end. The sweetest words of tongue or pen are not stocks, bonds, interests, and dividends. The sweetest words of tongue or pen are mother, father, wife, friends. They stand for life's consistencies. What have these thoughts to do with Rotary? They have everything to do with Rotary. This new life, which we are looking forward to and are talking about, is the Rotary life, which we have summarized in the expectations and expression of service above self. I wish to recognize several Rotarians today for their selfless acts of giving of themselves to support the good works of Rotary throughout the world and the many lives that they will improve. First, the Rotarian Honorable Judge Mallard for obtaining her first Paul Harris Fellow recognition. To Rotarian Susan Holtz for her 5th Paul Harris Fellow recognition. To Rotarian Gina Stevens for her 6th Paul Harris Fellow recognition. And to Arthur Cole for his recognition as a major donor to the ideals of Rotary through the Paul Harris Foundation. I'd like to thank all of you for your continued service above self. Through Rotary, we connect the world. And today, as we speak of service above self, we'll be talking to several of our local nonprofits and the impact of these interesting times. And for that introduction, I'd like to introduce our program chair for the month, Dana.
Thank you, Mike. I'm gonna get settled in my chair here as we get started. Thank you for that wonderful thought. This is such a lovely program today because not only are these women leaders in our community, but they're also my friends. And so we are happy to be able to see each other, albeit in a distanced environment here while we're filming. So, as Mike mentioned, the purpose of our meeting today is to talk about the nonprofit organizations in our community and how they've been impacted by COVID-19. They represent a diverse group of organizations, all led by these women who are passionate and have a drive for their work that is evident in all that they do. We will hear from the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Center, the Idaho Falls YMCA, and the Idaho Falls Arts Council. The Idaho Falls Senior Citizen Center was going to join us, but Valisa Say had something come up at the last minute that prohibited her from being here today, and so we will miss her participation and appreciated her willingness to be involved. I'm going to introduce each of these women briefly, and then we will move into the moderated question and answer portion of our program today. So first, Teena McBride is the Executive Director of the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Center. Teena's career has been spent working for local nonprofits, including actually the YMCA and the Development Workshop. She is currently and has been the Executive Director of the Domestic Violence Center for 26 years, which is an impressive amount of time dedicated to assisting victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse. Monica Bittrick is the Executive Director of the Idaho Falls YMCA. Monica is an Eastern Idaho native who was born and raised in Idaho Falls, and she holds bachelor's degrees in both business administration and HR management from Boise State University. She worked as the Director of Human Resources for Advantage Employer Solutions from 2007 to 2013, and in 2013 became the Managing Partner and Founder of BCG LLC, which is an HR and operations management firm. She retains that role while also becoming the Executive Director of the YMCA in 2016. Aside from dedicating her career and helping both the for-profit and nonprofit organizations in our community, Monica is actively engaged and serves our community in numerous ways, regularly volunteering for causes and events that she believes in. And last, we have Brandi Newton, who is the Executive Director of the Idaho Falls Arts Council. Brandi was also born and raised in Idaho Falls and began working for the Arts Council as a part-time accountant in 2010. She was the Auditorium on Broadway project manager as well before becoming the Executive Director in 2013. Brandi brings to our community a rich and diverse offering of the arts each year and makes it look easy to do so. She is incredibly passionate about her field, and I know from experience that it's hard to turn Brandi down if she comes with a request or thought about the arts community. So with that, we will get started with our questions today, and we will go in order as we answer from Monica to Brandi to Teena. So first, I think that we all in this audience know generally what these organizations do, but if you will describe your organization, what demographic you primarily serve, and your mission in our community. Monica?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having us here today with the Idaho Falls YMCA. So the YMCA crosses and serves a number of demographics and specific programs that support our community, including healthy living, education, and empowerment, specifically for impoverished individuals, families, and youth.
Thank you, Monica. Brandi?
Yeah, thanks for having us, Teena. The Idaho Falls Arts Council has a mission to bring education and professional performances to Idaho Falls. We're lucky enough to have the Colonial Theater as our home there at the Willard Arts Center, as well as visual arts. We're lucky also with the Auditorium on Broadway to serve a broader range of our community with kids. That really our goal is for you to have interaction with art in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you, Brandi. And Teena?
Thanks, ladies, for letting me join you today. This is great. Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Center serves victims of violent crime, child through adults. Our primary mission is establishing safety first for any victim of a violent crime, and then long-term helping them overcome the trauma that they have suffered. We do not want trauma to define the rest of their lives. So that's our mission in our community.
Thank you, Teena. So how has COVID-19 affected your organization programmatically, operationally, from a short-term, day-by-day perspective to the long-range planning and strategy that you're talking about? How have you been affected by COVID-19? Monica?
So to start off, I think everybody is very familiar with the YMCA and us providing healthy living programs, so fitness and specifically sports over the years. We've shifted our focus more specifically during COVID-19 to making sure that we have programming, so early learning and school age programs for essential workers, and also our first responders, including some of our healthcare workers. This has strengthened us and changed our focus a little bit as an organization and being more community driven, and also looking at how we can better serve the community in different ways, pivoting through pandemics and different changes in our community.
Thank you, Monica. We'll go into that a little bit more as we move forward, but Brandi, will you answer this question about affecting how your organization has been affected?
Yeah, I think it's no secret. It pretty much crippled everything. Similar to our history with the Spanish flu, the doors had to shut when we're unable to gather, we're unable to bring presenters to town, and to be able to share what we do. The challenge, I would say, is that moving forward, trying to have the confidence when we can do that, when can we return? And I think that really has brought a clarity to our mission that our supporters, our board of directors, our patrons, they want to do that. We thankfully have built in our community that we like to get together. We want to see a show. There's a camaraderie and a sense of community that you feel when you're able to participate in those things, and we're eager to get back to that whenever it's safe to do so. So it definitely has put a focus on the priorities, and that is that we want to serve the community and provide those experiences when it's safe. And so in the meantime, how do we kind of protect what has been built and make sure that we're here for the long term?
Thank you, Brandi. Teena?
What we found out is that the safety of your employees, that's one of the concerns that's coming out of this for me. We have been open this entire time. We did suspend groups, but as far as daily operations, we have been there as needed. We've continued to provide forensic interviews. We've continued to assist individuals on a daily basis with civil protection orders. We've learned to use technology better. Courts have been closed, so some of the things that we would do on a daily basis, going to a courthouse, to a law enforcement building, that stopped. As things are opening up, we have restarted groups, but we kind of start to look at, we've worked really hard to keep our staff healthy and safe, any of our clients coming in healthy and safe, and when you open those doors, people working, and we've worked on a daily basis, we've been frontline workers, that you kind of get a little skittish is just kind of a word that I would use to describe that, because you're wondering, where has this person been? We received a call the other day, somebody coming in had been traveling in Texas. It's known as a hot spot. So what precautions are we going to take to protect not only the staff, but any other clients you may have in the building at that time? So those are the things that we've kind of been looking at as we're preparing for more people to come through our doors.
Thank you, Teena. So along those lines, I'd like to ask now, sometimes it has been said in the last few weeks that throughout this all, as we're trying to see the positive in some of these situations, are there certain areas of your organization that have actually been strengthened during this time of challenge and hardship? And so, Monica, if you will start talking about what has been strengthened during this time, and then also, as Teena mentioned, maybe speak to a little bit of what those changes are that you've made as you will move forward to start bringing people back into your facility.
Absolutely. So I would answer, what has been strengthened at the YMCA in one word, being relationships. Relationships for our families, our community partners, really everybody that we serve overall has been strengthened. And that has been amazing to see during these very difficult and challenging times. What has been unaffected as far as our organization has been concerned has been the positivity of our staff, which has also been something that I think we've really and our board that we've really all rallied around in continuing to, pivot and maintain that great team environment that we've always had, and then bring that up to the next level. Some of the changes that we have done more specifically at the Y, we have, specifically, I'm guessing with facilities and probably our programs, we have worked very closely with our community healthcare providers. We've been working with Eastern Idaho Regional Medical Center as a community partner, Mountain View Hospital, Idaho Community Hospital, and East Idaho Public Health to ensure that every piece of what we're doing with our facilities and our programs are continuing to keep all of our staff, our volunteers, and more importantly, the individuals and the families that we serve in the safest environment.
Thank you, Monica. Brandi?
I think the one thing we've strengthened the most is, I think, our resolve for the mission, and that simple participation in a musical act, in a theater act, the belief in having those experiences is really the goal. It doesn't matter how big the show is, how flashy the show is, that it really is the desire to have that inspiration and that emotional connection through the arts. And so I think that really has allowed us to bring it back to the basics of what's going on. As far as anything that we're doing ineffective, no. Right? We don't know how this is going to open up. We don't know if we can bring artists to town. We have very little clarity as to what we can or can't do moving forward. And the great part about that is that then all the rules are out the window. Anything we historically felt like we had to do, we can rewrite that and really try to be imaginative with how we can connect with the community and their interaction with art forms. As far as bringing people back into the building, as most people know with businesses, it's a little bit of a moving target at this point. We, of course, are doing all the protocols of sneeze guards and cleaning and all of those things that would be expected, and then trying to really think about what's really going to make you feel comfortable to be in the theater with a group of people, whether that's social distanced or masked. But luckily, we already had those things in place as far as the cleanliness of the building and the priority of patron experience. How do we now pivot that so that when you're with us, you feel as comfortable and as safe as we possibly can?
Thank you, Brandi. Teena?
Team-wise, I think probably something that has happened is, as a small team, we've grown closer. For a while, there were probably 10 days where it just seemed like it was just going to be us sitting in this building. You were wondering if people were going to come. And then our community stakeholders, once they figured out we weren't closing, we're still available, we're there to provide the services that are needed, working with them on keeping them safe, keeping us safe, keeping clients safe. So, those relationships, we had to figure out how to keep them strong and strengthen them. A lot of people Zoom meetings. And I have to be honest with you, I like people. I'm getting a little tired of Zoom meetings. But at the same time, how can they be beneficial, keep us connected, allow us to continue to do the job that we need to do? And we've figured out how to do that, how to help clients, through technology. So that's new knowledge. We've learned that sometimes even if somebody has to be away, you can still bring them to the table, where we used to just kind of believe if you weren't at the table, then you weren't going to be available. And so that's been a positive for us. And just, kind of like why I'm listening to Brandi and, working with large groups and things like that. And, being essentially totally shut down, that to me, I can't imagine trying to navigate that. This has been difficult enough on its own. Looking at those community partners, for a while, we weren't allowed to go to ERMAC to treat a sex assault victim. That victim had to come to us, and that was something we worked very hard in the community to try and prevent. COVID didn't allow us to do that, but we were able to make it work. We were able to meet the needs of all the victims that required a sex assault nurse. And so, we just learned to do it a different way, but hopefully the services will still good.
Thank you, Teena. That leads me to a question that I have for you. While most of the questions today are for our group as a whole, I have a couple for each individual since their organization is unique from one another. And so, Teena, you mentioned that being the opposite of completely closed down and, in fact, maybe more busy. It has been reported that quarantine and self-isolation have correlated with increased domestic violence and abuse issues. Can you answer, has that been the case in Idaho Falls? And what advice or guidance would you give to individuals who may be struggling?
As a matter of fact, I happen to be looking at some stats, and child abuse cases were down. Child abuse reports to CPS were down. We continued to see forensic interviews. As a matter of fact, for a couple of weeks we were below average, but as they realized we're not closed and those services are still available, law enforcement, not just within Bonneville County and Idaho Falls, but within the region, came through our doors. We provided those interviews. And some weeks we did up to 5 interviews. That's a positive thing, especially when we've had less eyes on our kids. Kids have been at home. They've not been at school. They've not been at sports activities and things like that. DV cases, those calls for law enforcement, I believe they were up like 13% during this time frame. For people that, and I just had an interview this morning that I participated in, victims need to make a decision based on their circumstance at the time. If they feel they are unsafe and they have access and they can safely call 911, they need to do that. Neighbors, people in the general public, if you're seeing something and what you're hearing or what you're seeing makes you nervous, you need to call 911. It's not a personal problem. It's not a family problem. It's a community problem. And again, when you go back and look at the trauma that impacts this family spills over into our community. And so we all need to be addressing this.
Thank you, Teena. Thank you for answering that so thoroughly. I want to move on to a question about the financial aid packages or relief that have been available to nonprofit organizations. So has your organization qualified to receive such assistance? And this could be from the federal level, the state level, the local, or private corporations. There have been a lot of grants and loan opportunities. Has your organization qualified to receive assistance or not? Monica?
Yes, absolutely. We have been very fortunate and blessed with the Idaho Falls YMCA to receive from YUSA. We did receive some international funding through a very generous grant of donors from all over the world helping small YMCAs like ours. We also received some grants locally from private donors, and then also participated in the payroll protection program as well with our great community partners over at the Bank of Idaho. Additionally, we've been just surrounded by love and support with our members more specifically, so shout out to them. Thank you for all of our members that have continued to stay with us and supported us through these difficult times. And then various community partners, including ERMAC, Idahoan, Mountain View Hospital Charities, and a number of others. So again, very fortunate and blessed, and we thank the community for that.
Thank you, Monica. Brandi?
Yeah, we were lucky enough, thanks to the Bank of Idaho as well, to receive the PPP loan. There are CARES dollars that have been appropriated via the NEA that'll go through the Idaho the Idaho Commission on the Arts. And so those as well are, I guess, in the mail, so to speak. But we're lucky enough to have long-term donors that have been able to sustain us, and a board of directors that has put a priority on savings. We're living on the gratitude and the smart decisions of previous boards of directors so that we can hopefully see a good, solid future.
Thank you, Brandi. Teena?
We've been lucky in that it's not something I've had to research in depthly. Both I have to say at the federal level and at the state level, our funders have been great and stepping up and to meet the needs of the people that we're serving. They've seen housing as a priority and allowing us to adjust our budgets. So what we've been able to do is kind of keep our population, our individuals that we serve, out of the mainstream and be able to provide some housing funds, help them with diapers, with some hygiene needs, things like that. In the future, are we going to possibly have some funding issues? Time will tell. And are those resources still going to be available should we need to tap into them? I hope so. But during this mainstream time, we've sat well, our funders have been great, and we have done okay.
Thank you, Teena. Along those lines, I'm going to jump down to a question that correlates with this funding conversation. So because some funding for nonprofit organizations requires matching funds, what are the challenges and needs that now exist in regards to your fundraising efforts? Monica?
So I think all nonprofits are going through what we are navigating in the fundraising world as what's called the new normal for us. A lot of us in this room are used to those big galas and events where you can draw people in, raise funds for particular programs or, specifics with our organizations, and that's probably going to look a little bit different. Donors are looking at things very differently as well, including your small businesses, your larger businesses and corporations with the funding that is out there. And so for all of us, I think in this room and really the nonprofit community, it's trying to figure out what that looks like and how we are going to navigate through receiving different funding and tapping into and working with those donors and supporters that have been so generous to us in the past.
Thank you, Monica. Brandi, do you see some matching fund efforts as a challenge?
The matching funds usually for us isn't as far as from an educational standpoint and those things that we do for reach out. What is going to be the challenge for us is obviously we are event based as far as our sponsorship avenues. So we pretty much have to rewrite the book. If I don't know if I can have any shows, then how can I promise I can acknowledge a sponsor? So it really is one of those that we've always been really blessed to have donors that are supporting the Arts Council, and they're supporting the Arts Council in what we do on an everyday basis, and we just acknowledge them from the stage or on a poster. But now really is, putting that kind of like rubber to the road, that we hope people will sponsor shows, whether they happen when they're scheduled to happen or if they're deferred. We're confident, and our supporters have been wonderful. We had 4 shows we had to cancel or postpone when this all hit in March. We still had 3 shows left on our season, and they were like, the fear as a nonprofit is that they want their money back. And we were lucky enough for them to say, no, keep the money, roll it forward, whatever we've got to do to make sure that it survives. But it is complicated, and those are the mechanisms that have been our kind of avenues for success for several years, and that we've got to rethink them. And that obviously, if we can't gather people and acknowledge sponsors, we don't know if sponsors are still going to be on board with supporting more mission-based than actual activities.
Thank you, Brandi. Teena?
Actually, our largest funding source does require matching funds. And so matching funds for us can be in kind. It can be donations, it can be fundraising. And about our budget's probably maybe about 15% of it comes from fundraising. We have to match around $200,000 to $230,000 a year in funding. And so when you start to take out fundraising, when you start to possibly limit contributions because people can't afford to donate. Businesses have been closed. People haven't been working. We are trying to just survive and provide basic needs and homeschool your children, which that's been a challenge all into itself. But we have to kind of look at what's going to happen there. This last quarter of funding, the feds did waive that match. Are they going to waive anymore? I don't know. So it's just another one of those tricky little avenues we're going to have to figure out. Is there some way you can do a fundraiser different? Is there another avenue we can get maybe a different grant from that you can be used as match? I can't match federal dollars with federal dollars. So I'm just going to have to kind of navigate that as it comes down the pathway towards us.
Thank you, Teena. Along these same lines, but reaching out a little bit broader than simply financial asks, I've heard the phrase compassion fatigue used throughout our country and the national media in regards to people being willing to either give of their resources or time to some organizations. Do you feel, and you've answered this a little bit in the questions leading up to this, but do you feel as though the compassion in Idaho Falls in general has decreased or increased in the recent months? Monica?
I would say it's increased in different ways. I would say that our East Idaho is just an amazing area. Idaho Falls, Ammon, I mean, everybody from north to south is always just willing to jump in and give and help in the ways that they can. I just think it's looked a little bit different for all of us through these very challenging times. So I would say it's increased. It just looks and feels different. Previously as nonprofits and with different programs and projects, you'd see people, maybe giving all of their regular donations. Now it might just look like, okay, maybe, could I send somebody over to volunteer and help with, the community food basket because you're down on volunteers? I think our community has really increased, what they're doing. It just, again, looks a little bit different than it has previously.
Thank you, Monica. That's a great explanation. Brandi?
I would have to agree. Anywhere from our volunteers that are eager to come back, and we've got over 200 plus that are on a regular rotation to help with every event that came through the theater. And I think we always kind of lived in this scenario that we never wanted our community to ever think that we wouldn't be here and that we wouldn't be available and that we wouldn't be doing anything. Even as a nonprofit, you always wanted a little bit of like, hey, can you slide $10 our way to make sure we can keep doing this? I think now it feels tangible. And so you really see their concern that we're not going to make it. And that I think has been really heartwarming and encouraging for us. So I would agree that I think in the face of kind of the tragedies that are going on around them, they're looking to make sure that we're going to be okay and what they can do to help us.
Thank you, Brandi. And Teena?
I have seen some amazing partnerships grow as you're just watching news articles and things like that in the community. I have seen major businesses within our community step up, whether they're helping food bank, whether they're helping a local shelter, whatever it is that they're doing. But I also think as we roll out of this, there's just a lot of unrest, and people are just basically fatigued, period. They've been locked up. Like Brandi says, there's not a lot of entertainment outlets. Camping is a big thing going on right now. But there's also a lot of, it's like people are a little overwhelmed with the world. There's a lot going on, and they're all trying to maneuver it, get through it, understand it. And I think sometimes that can have impact on them. It's not that they don't care. It's that they're kind of emotionally exhausted. It's been tough. And hopefully what happens as we're going to move into phase 4, things are going to open up a little bit better. Our numbers aren't going to grow. And that's just going to lighten a lot of stuff. And I think then too, people are going to get comfortable moving back into what used to be some norm. Is it going to be 100%? I think that's going to depend upon the individual and what they're willing to do and the risks they're willing to take. But hopefully everybody starts to breathe a little easier, and some of that stress comes down, and we get to start enjoying each other again.
Thank you, Teena. Brandi, you mentioned that that there are a lot of different ways, particularly with the Arts Council, that people could volunteer. And so I want to ask you, the question that I had for you in particular, you are unique in this group and in Idaho Falls in general, in that your organization is largely run on gathering large groups of people together. And so as COVID-19 has happened, and this has affected you particularly in a gathering sense, how will the Colonial Theater operate moving forward, and how has the upcoming season been changed because of the restrictions, and how could people still participate?
Yeah, it was a difficult question, and I'm grateful to a board of directors where half of us sat in a room and half of us were on a Zoom call to really talk about what feels true to the character of the Arts Council and what do we feel our community needs and wants us to do. And so we are putting a season together. We are planning for shows to come. It's a constant moving target that is, like I mentioned earlier, it's a little bit of supply and demand. I might have a contract and the next day the artist calls and says, the three dates around you in the surrounding cities have all canceled, and so we're not coming. And I can't fault them for that. They're trying to make a living as well. So, for us, it's a little bit of going back to basics. We won't be presenting Broadway. Broadway productions right now obviously can't do a map of where they're going to go since so many theaters are still shut down, in addition to just the entire industry in the city of New York. But it's how do we then identify programming that, again, is broad scoping so that everybody can come and participate in something. And then it's about, I know it's the key word, about pivoting and flexibility. We will, I guess for lack of a delay as long as possible to make terms of participation conditioned to what's going on around us. As of right now, we don't plan to have anything scheduled prior to mid to late September, knowing that could move, that could pivot. You might think you're coming to see a show in the car gallery, and the day before, the governor could say you've got a social distance, so that artist is now going to be on the Colonial Theater. You thought on that stage, you thought you were coming to see somebody, now we can only have 300 people in the theater, so now you might be at the early seating and your friends are at the late seating, or something along those lines. I think we're trying to be a little bit of that beacon of light in the chaos that is our community right now, and letting you know that we are going to present shows. It won't be as many as the year before. They might not be as flashy as they once were, but it's still high quality programming, and we hope to do a broad enough range so that everybody can find something that they can come and participate in a manner that is comfortable to them.
Thank you, Brandi. I can imagine that as a leader that those are very difficult conversations and decisions to make, and we admire you for what you've done. I want to move to a different topic now regarding advocacy. What advocacy efforts is there a collective advocacy effort from the nonprofit community in Idaho Falls? If so, can you please talk about that? And if not, do you as an organization have particular advocacy efforts that you participate in? And perhaps in the past it was one thing, and with COVID now it has changed, and so you could speak a little bit about that as well. Monica?
So I think we have the most amazing nonprofit community, to be honest with you. A few years ago, there were a handful of some of our nonprofit community leaders, including at the time the iTech Foundation, the Idaho Falls Arts Council, and a few others that had just grouped together to create what we call the Nonprofit Coffee Hour. That collectively is a group of all of our nonprofits that work together on a consistent basis, more on the monthly side of things as much as we can. And then more recently, we've been working together through these challenging times to support each other, collaborate. Previously, it was a lot of fun where we could all just, come together and have these great conversations of, what's going on with your organization and what needs do you have and how can we help each other. That was fun because we're all, I think we're all people persons, as I will call it. We love getting together and having fun and serving the community. But more recently, it's been a different focus where we've had to advocate for each other. So if there's been a need in between the organizations, like let's say, the domestic violence, center, what could, the community food basket do, to help some of those needs. educationally, what can we do and how can we advocate together, for children with the different programs. So it's looked a little bit different, but I would say we've all been trying to work together and advocate together. The uniform command team that you have been serving on and leading, Dana, has been fantastic. And also working with our core group as well to make sure that, everybody from all the governmental agencies and our business community are communicating and supporting the nonprofits collectively.
Thank you, Monica. Brandi?
I would say the primary focus of our advocacy efforts prior to COVID was eliminating barriers for participation in the arts. And so that's whether as a patron or a participant. A lot of that would come through, having the theater be available for as minimal cost as possible, helping advise the city of Idaho Falls with the civic auditorium. And also, I sit on the board of the Arts Northwest organization, which is regional. And so now it is having conversations with some of those theaters that are smaller than us. And how are they going to handle? There's a small theater in Grace, Idaho. What is she going to do? And so how can I help her maneuver even some of the business aspects of running a theater and what options are available? That's really the focus of kind of advocacy in our industry right now.
Thank you, Brandi. Teena?
Just kind of spinning off on, what Monica has said. I think what we've done is we've looked at each other's strengths and we've really tried to rely on the strengths of those nonprofits, understanding that there isn't a single nonprofit in this community that can address every need. We can't. We're much stronger as a team, and we do that really, really well within Idaho Falls and even our outlying areas. We support each other all the time, not just in an emergency or a crisis, but we have constant support for each other as nonprofits. At a state level, I have had more meetings for a while. We statewide were meeting under a networking entity that a majority of our DV programs belong to on a weekly basis. We were writing a lot of policies. We were talking about, trying to get guidance from the state about, how do we write this policy? What do you want it to look like? There were specifics we needed to, meet. And luckily, those meetings now we're down to once a month. But it's like Brandi's talking about too. You have smaller programs within the state or within your region, and how can you help them navigate, and get through this and keep staff safe, all of those things. So I think it's just made those relationships stronger. Some entities you possibly haven't worked with before, you're working with now. Those you've worked with for a while, those relationships, they're just a little bit stronger now. We're good as a team. It's when we work best.
Thank you, Teena. Teena mentioned that there is such diversity amongst our nonprofit organizations as well as in the room today. And Monica, I'd like to ask you now your individual question for YMCA. Each of you have a different focus. And Monica, you specifically work with some children and youth. And so I've been wondering, as children's home patterns have changed and been disrupted due to school closures or parents now working from home, what have you noticed in the youth that attend the YMCA programs and activities? And how have you adapted to address the challenges and circumstances that kids are now facing?
That's a great question. So I'm surrounded by children all day, every day, from toddlers all the way up to 12 years old in our child care programs. And so, the question, I think initially the kids were very excited to start off, like, oh, I don't have to go to school now. This is so fun. This is so exciting. But then, you start to see how, socially and emotionally that really wears on children, not just as professionals, but also as, parents as well. And so that excitement turned to confusion with youth, which turned to, really fatigue and starting to emotionally impact them. The favorite question that I had more specifically from the kids in, I would say, April or May, like going from excitement over to the emotional toll was, is COVID-19 or is the coronavirus gone? in our state because their whole lives have been impacted. So when we're thinking about kids and what we're doing with all of our programs, from the early learning to school age to day camp to reintroducing sports to, what Big Elk Creek Resident Camp looks at moving forward for us, we're actually doing a huge focus on the social emotional learning aspect, because that's what kids need the most now. They need to, they need to be educated, and homeschooling has been a challenge, for all of those parents at home, but all of us that have educational or childcare programs, that's been a whole different ballgame to have staff that are not educators actually have to jump in and be a teacher, as opposed to, your STEM counselor at the end of the day. So we've really had a huge focus on how do we, navigate through those needs of the kids and ensure that they have that support through social emotional learning and everything that we do, because in the end, we want our kids to come out better, stronger, and, mentally prepared for anything that comes their way moving forward.
Thank you, Monica. I think that's great. Speaking of you all as leaders, I think that leadership is forged during many different circumstances, and I want to be mindful of what you all are going through and some of the challenges as well as opportunities that this has presented to you. So from a community level, what can we do that would be most beneficial for your organization and for you as a leader right now? Monica?
I think what I can speak to is understanding that there is a new normal for all of our organizations. When I think about our membership, when we reopened the doors, they were ready to just, almost walk back in to, what they had walked away from when we had to close our doors. And we had to educate and communicate them on, we're still open, we're still providing programs, it just looks a little bit different. So understanding that there's a new normal and being patient with the nonprofits and their operations, I think is very critical at this point in time for all of us. As far as, what we need as an organization, are, looking at things in the fresh perspective, very similar to what we were talking about with the collaborations of the nonprofits. Having the community come together and say, on a community sense, hey, the community food basket needs this, or, the Arts Council needs this, or the Museum of Idaho needs this, and we understand, the different missions and visions and the programs from a community base, and helping us to collaborate and better serve the bigger needs from what, as a, in between the nonprofits, as to what the community would like us to do.
Thank you, Monica. Brandi?
I agree with a statement that Teena said earlier. She was scared for her employees. So I would say, as a leader of an organization, a public organization, at this point in time, it's patience and compassion. We're worried about our employees. Can we keep them safe? Can we keep them paid? If we don't have any events, what do we do next? How do we continue to honor donors if we can't do what we told them we thought we were going to be able to do? And going forward, I don't know exactly what the right thing is at the exact right moment. We're funneling through information as quickly as we possibly can from every news source that's available and every organization we have. And sometimes we're going to get it wrong. And know that, or be compassionate to us, that we're always with that mindset of trying to keep everyone safe while also providing them with a positive experience when they interact with us. And so I think that's been the hardest game, is I want to give comfort to everyone that interacts with the Arts Council that we're going to be okay and it's all going to be fine, and we're going to find a way to, put a big name back on the stage, and, and we're going to move forward and have dancers there again and all those sorts of things. And I don't know. We know that we're here for the long haul. We know we're going to do everything we can in our powers as an organization to do that. but it might not be in the same version. I know it's not going to be in the same version for a while, and it might take us a little bit longer to get back to the exact experience you got to have before.
Thank you. Teena?
I think it kind of goes off both of what Monica said and what Brandi has said, and understanding that the changes that we make with the best of intentions. We're trying to keep people safe. We're trying to maintain our services. And if you find something isn't working, communicate that with us. Let us know. Does it mean we'll be able to change it? Possibly. But if we don't know if our changes are having impact on somebody, then we'll keep doing something that it may be detrimental. All of this is new. All of it is different. But we want to always provide the best of whatever it is our mission is within our agencies. And so, just please always communicate, whether it's as a client or whether it's as a stakeholder. Just let us know how we're doing and let us know how we can do it better and safer.
Thank you, Teena. And for our last question today for our program, I want to wrap back to the first question of talking about the purpose of your organization and who you serve, lifting our minds a little bit from the COVID-19 discussion, including that, but also just in general. As you get up in the morning and go to work so hard for your organization and our community, ultimately, what change do you want to see in our community because of the work that your organization does? Monica?
I think the thing that I would say, and the biggest change that I'd like to see in the community is more support and compassion to a certain extent of not, just the nonprofits that are here today, but all nonprofits, and understand, as I think one of my mentors when I came into the Y had said, nonprofits serve populations and demographics that nobody else wants to serve because there's not a profit in it. So remember that the work that all of these nonprofits are doing is to really, truly help a lot of people that, wouldn't have that support otherwise. And, just be compassionate, find ways to get engaged and involved. Think outside the box. A lot of nonprofits have great ways to get involved. That doesn't always mean that we're looking to tap your credit card or your pocketbooks, but how can you volunteer? How can you make a difference? What input can you provide? Can you serve on a board? How can you make an impact and provide that compassion and support for those critical nonprofits and programs that are supporting those that need that help and should or can be served in our community.
Well said, Monica. Brandi?
I think we still, at the core of who we are, believe that your participation in the arts is what brings color to your life and to your community. We want you to laugh next to your friends. We want you to hear a song that you can sing along to. We want you to feel the emotions of an actor on stage. I want to still see children at auditorium discover how to draw, to know what collage is, to dance on a green screen. We want to continue to use an arts as a mechanism of expression. And we hope to continue to do that. And that's whether or not you're sitting in the seats at the Colonial Theater to participate or you're a child that gets to dance on the stage. Our hope is that we get to continue to do that and to do that together.
Thank you, Brandi. And Teena?
I'd like to see people let's step up and be a little bit more tolerant of each other, a little kinder. We've been stressed. We've been locked up. Still some limitations, but I think, just take a deep breath. It's not forever, and let's just be a little more tolerant of each other.
Thank you, Teena. Thank you, ladies, each of you, for coming today and for participating in our program. The nonprofit world is unique, and it's something that each of you have had challenges with as we've gone through the COVID-19 pandemic and will continue forward. But words that I heard today from each of you about being flexible and understanding as community members, having compassion, and supporting in any way we can, I think that we as Rotary members and members of our community can take going forward and help in ways that we can. So thank you again for your time, and I will turn the closure of our program over to Michael Blennis, our Rotary President.
Thank you, Dana, for another great program. And thank you to all the nonprofits in our community that help keep those programs going. Specifically, Monica, thank you and the YMCA for taking care of our children and our physical health. And to Brandi at the Arts Council, thank you for keeping arts in our hearts alive as we look forward to the next season. And Teena, thank you for providing light to those in need, that there really will be a better tomorrow. And I think those are great examples of service above self, and what really inspires our community to be a great community is being kind to everyone and looking out for everyone in our community. And just a quick plug for our upcoming programs. Next week on June 17th, we're going to be talking about rural hospitals during COVID-19. Is it an opportunity or are they a casualty? And then on the 24th, the future of classroom education. We've heard some of that discussion today about the challenges of being an impromptu homeschool. And we'll also, on the 24th, be presenting our Rotary Scholarship winners. We're proud to award 6 $1,000 scholarships for people who are working on their future and how to be a future citizen of our community. And with that, we thank you again for joining us at the Idaho Falls Community Luncheon, and we look forward to seeing you again. Have a great day.